Everything you think you know about medieval royalty is wrong. Forget the fairy tale banquets and velvet capes you saw in that Netflix series. Those are the sanitized, Instagram-filtered versions. The real story is so grotesque that most historians still refuse to teach it. You don't learn this in history classes, but there once lived a king so morbidly obese that when he finally died, his own corpse exploded inside its lead-lined coffin and splattered mourners with liquefied organs. And wait, this is the same monarch whose face is still stamped on British coins. Ready to hear how much worse it gets? One, the king they don't put on posters. Let's start with the name they still whisper in Windsor Castle corridors: King George IV, Prince Regent, ultimate party boy, and the man who single-handedly kept the royal pastry chefs employed. But hear what textbooks won't tell you. By 1821, the year he was crowned, George weighed somewhere between 320 and 340 pounds on a 5'10" frame. That's like strapping 2 refrigerators to a man and asking him to waltz. Court doctors described his legs as tree trunks weeping lymph, and the smell that trailed behind him. Think rotting hams left in a sauna. Ladies-in-waiting dabbed perfume on their upper lips just to curtsy without vomiting. But it gets worse. 2. The bed that had to be reinforced twice. George's favorite palace was Brighton Pavilion, that onion-domed fever dream on the English coast. Inside, he commissioned a custom bed 10 feet by 10 feet, built from mahogany so thick carpenters used shipwrights' joints. The mattress was triple-stacked horsehair. Even then, the frame cracked under his weight. In 1824, royal carpenters rushed back, bolted iron girders underneath, and prayed. The king's response. He ordered midnight banquets, whole roasted swans, towers of syllabub, and a dessert course nicknamed the defibrillator, because it contained so much candied peel and brandy it could restart a corpse. You don't learn this in history classes, but George's nightly intake was 8,000 calories. That's 4 days' worth of modern USDA guidelines in a single sitting. Wait until you hear what happened next. 3. The secret surgery that turned into a butcher shop. By 1828, George couldn't climb stairs. His ankles ballooned like wet loaves of bread, and his skin split in fissures that leaked pink fluid. Desperate court physicians called in the era's most feared barber surgeon, Sir Anthony Carlisle, who proposed a heroic measure, draining 40 pounds of fluid from the king's legs. They strapped him to a dining table, the only surface wide enough, soaked towels in laudanum, and sliced deep into the swollen flesh. Accounts from the lone nurse present describe geysers of yellow serum mixed with clots the size of a child's fist. The king screamed so loudly that footmen outside the door stuffed their ears with candle wax. But it gets worse. The wounds never closed. Gangrene set in, turning royal calves into blackened, stinking logs. Doctors applied leeches 400 at a time until the king's blood resembled watered-down Merlot. Textbooks won't tell you this, but the royal apothecary kept a ledger 6,000 leeches in 6 weeks. Think about that next time someone romanticizes historical medicine. 4. The coronation that broke the floor. You've seen the 2023 coronation footage, pretty tame, right? George's coronation in 1821 makes that look like a backyard barbecue. He demanded a train so long it took 8 peers to carry it, each man staggering under 50 pounds of velvet and ermine. The king himself wore a 27-pound coronation robe. Mid-ceremony, the floor of Westminster Abbey groaned, then gave way. One witness wrote the board beneath His Majesty's feet split like a ship's hull on rocks, and the monarch sank 2 inches, wheezing like a dying walrus. Still, George insisted on a 5-hour banquet afterward. He ate while seated on a reinforced throne, with the seat cut out to accommodate abscesses on his buttocks. Yes, you read that right. His royal backside was so ulcerated carpenters had to scoop a semicircle from the wood so he could sit. And wait until you hear what happened when he tried to consummate his marriage. 5. The wedding night that never was. George married Caroline of Brunswick in 1795. The union was political, the couple loathed each other, and the king's weight rendered him impotent. According to a lady's maid's diary kept hidden in the royal archive until 1985, Caroline told a friend he possesses a splendid belly, but beneath it nothing stirs. Court doctors dosed him with Spanish fly, rhinoceros horn powder, even electric eel liniment. Nothing worked. The marriage went unconsummated, yet George still managed to father illegitimate children with mistresses earlier in life, proof that his obesity was progressive. But the marriage fiasco wasn't the worst indignity. Let's talk about the moment the crown literally became stuck. 6. The crown that needed a blacksmith. George insisted on wearing the 2.3-pound imperial state crown at public functions. By 1828, his head had grown so large, measuring 24 inches around, that the gold frame dug into his temples. Jewelers tried expanding the band, it snapped. Finally, the royal blacksmith heated the crown over a brazier and hammered it wider. The king's scalp blistered beneath, but he refused to remove it, convinced the populace must see him crowned. Courtiers joked that the monarch's head had outpaced the empire's inflation. Still, the worst was yet to come. And it involves a lead coffin and a June heatwave. 7. The death that wasn't dignified. On June 26, 1830, George IV died at Windsor Castle. Contemporary bulletins claimed he passed peacefully. That's the sanitized version. In reality, he'd been comatose for days, his body so bloated that the linen sheets split when attendants tried to change them. The royal undertaker, William Banting, yes, the ancestor of the low-carb Banting diet, ordered a custom triple-width coffin soldered from lead. Problem: the corpse was still swelling due to bacterial gases. They had to wait 4 days for the funeral, and London was in the middle of a heatwave, temperatures above 90. You don't learn this in history classes, but the stench inside the death chamber was so horrific that maids fainted. Physicians covered the body in charcoal and chloride of lime, yet the smell seeped through stone walls. Birds reportedly fell dead from the sky outside the open window. But it gets worse. 8. The procession that became a splash zone. The funeral cortege set out July 15. George's coffin was so heavy, lead plus 300+ pounds of decomposing monarch, it took 16 men to lift it. Halfway to St. George's Chapel, the lead seam split. Witnesses described a low wet pop, followed by a jet of black fluid that spattered the velvet pall and the clergy's white surplices. The Bishop of Winchester staggered back, retching, as the liquid half-rotted intestines dissolved in adipocere soaked his vestments. Contemporary newspapers buried the incident in single-line euphemisms. A slight effusion regrettably occurred. That's code for the king's guts exploded on the bishop. And we're not done. Because George's final indignity happened 6 feet underground. 9. The grave that refused to stay closed for decades. After Windsor groundskeepers complained of a persistent sweet, sickly odor wafting from the royal vault. In 1888, during routine maintenance, workmen opened George's coffin to relocate it. Inside they found a brown sludge, the bones floating like macabre islands. The lead had corroded, mixing with bodily fluids to create a toxic soup. One laborer accidentally splashed his arm, the skin peeled off in sheets. The incident was hushed up, the vault resealed with concrete, and the story erased from official records. Still think the monarchy is all glamour and corgis? 10. Why they still hide this story. Here's the modern relevance bridge. George IV's obesity parallels our own epidemic. The man's daily calorie intake mirrors today's fast food combo meals. His mobility issues echo scooters in big box stores. Yet historians sanitize him, perhaps because admitting a king literally exploded undercuts the divine right narrative. When Buckingham Palace tweets polished portraits of past monarchs, remember the unspoken footnote: one of them detonated. Next time you see a commemorative coin with George's profile, those jowls, that smirk, know you're looking at the face that once launched 1,000 chunks. And maybe, just maybe, skip that second helping of dessert.